So hey there, I just wanted to talk to you about really a couple things, in particular just the holidays in general and Thanksgiving, check in, see how you're doing. But I thought I'd start with something that's kind of fun. This is my Advent wreath, as you can see. It's a pretty basic one. I know some of you have these, but I recently found out that some of you don't. We've been getting ready for this year and we're like, oh, we've got to do our Advent wreaths this year at home. In the church, we'll be videotaping people every week, lighting them and doing the readings. And people are like, oh, I don't have an Advent wreath. So I thought maybe a little bit of a refresher might be helpful. This is what they look like. This one I got years ago at the Sons of Norway Festival, I think in Acton. Gunbjorg Egerhigh convinced me to go. It was great fun. We ended up with one of these. And the way it works is you light the candles, and it's one for each week. And the purple ones, here we go. The purple ones like this, so this would be Advent 1 and Advent 2, get lit like that. But then after those two, you light this pink one. Now, I actually prefer white candles, which don't come with a different colored one, but you light the pink one in the third week, and then the fourth week is the last of the, that's hot. The last of the purple candles. So this is what it should look like on the fourth Sunday in Advent. And we will be lighting them up at church for each of our video worship services, and you are welcome to drag your wreath out and light it right along with us if you'd like, to sort of welcome the season. If you don't have one of these, you can get one. You can make one. I wanted to show you this. This is actually a wire insert that goes into an actual wreath, like a fire hazard wreath. And you can get tall candles and mess with that, but keep an eye on it. Or you can just get 4 candles. Votives work, these things, candlesticks. If you have enough of them, they don't have to match. And just, it's a nice little Advent ritual that I've been doing since I was a kid. And I know that some of you have, but if you haven't, that's how it works, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Why the pink one is the third week, I can't remember if I ever knew. I'll try to look it up and have a video for you about that closer to the third Sunday in Advent. But yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing this holiday season, right? Wherever we are, we'll be lighting our candles and thinking about each other and thinking about the season and what it means to us personally. This is different, by the way, from different than the sanctuary lighting. Most of you know what that is. We do that every year on the first Sunday in Advent, or at least for the first 10 years. Where we light a candle in each of the windows in the sanctuary and we do a reading. The readings that we do are then the readings for Advent 2, Advent 3, and Advent 4 in church. So they're the worship readings for really all of Advent. Every once in a while, I encounter a member of the church who's like, we do that? And the reason why some of you have not seen this and are not aware of that ritual is because the first Sunday in Advent, being the Sunday right after Thanksgiving most of the time, is one of the prime skippable Sundays. So even if you are a fairly regular attender, you may not have realized that you haven't been at church the Sunday after Thanksgiving for Lord knows how long. So that's why, if you haven't heard of it. But now you get to see it. And the rest of us who've seen it, of course, it's part of our regular Advent tradition. So I'm looking forward to that. We've already gone into the church and we filmed all the parts, and our intrepid tech crew will be putting that together for us. But that's Advent, and I want to talk a little bit about Thanksgiving. So let me slide this over. Oh, use a plate underneath these things, because when you do this, wax goes everywhere. Trust me on this. It's bad. There's going to have to be some apologizing later. Anyway, though, I wanted to talk a little bit about Thanksgiving in particular, because it's the first thing up. But the holidays in general, because we know it's going to be kind of strange. It's going to be, in many ways, imperfect. Most holidays are. We have expectations that are realistic in many ways, but this year they're going to feel just a little bit more unmoored is the word I would use. We're adapting. We're all having to make compromises that we'd rather not make. And Thanksgiving's a really big example of that, right? Halloween, less so. Now we're in Thanksgiving. This is the most celebrated holiday in the United States. For many of us, myself included, it's our favorite holiday. And so when it comes off not perfect, it can be, kind of stinky. And what I've been doing is I've been thinking about how these days, I try to remember that there have been other Thanksgivings that have not been perfect, and some that have just been downright bummers in some respects. In my own life, I can think of two. One year we had Thanksgiving. Allison and I were both students at McGill University in Montreal. We did not go home for Thanksgiving because, of course, in Canada, they have a different Thanksgiving, so school was on. And it was okay, but it was also a little weird. Just us and a few other Americans surrounded by people who just didn't care that it was Thanksgiving. Canadians are lovely people. They weren't mean about it, but it's clear that it wasn't their thing. And so that was weird, a little isolating. It was the first time, because it was college, it was the first time that things had been different from the Thanksgivings of my childhood. And that was disorienting. And then another one that sprung to mind, again in my own life, was one year my grandfather died the week of Thanksgiving. And he loved Thanksgiving. And that year we had actually planned on not going. Allison and I were living in Chicago. I was in seminary. I can't remember the exact reason why, but there was things to do, and we just couldn't get from Chicago to Dutchess County, New York, where my grandparents lived, and then back to Chicago for whatever it was. But instead, we did go home for Thanksgiving for my grandfather's funeral, and that was a weird time. And in fact, we actually came back on Thanksgiving Day on the train, and our Thanksgiving dinner was General Tso's chicken in what I think, it probably wasn't, but it certainly felt like the only restaurant that was open in Chicago on Thanksgiving night. I think there was one other couple there, but that was also weird. It's sort of a nice memory now, I think back on it, but at the time it wasn't so great. And then of course there are other stories of holidays that weren't quite perfect, right? We think of the Second World War. A lot of the stories that I've heard, and certainly some people that we know have experienced that, it was not ideal. It was a time of great displacement and turbulence, the Great Depression as well. And really any time of crisis, other wars, other periods of displacement that we seem to have fairly frequently, have created for some people a similar situation. There's also personal Thanksgivings, sort of closer to what mine were like, but other people have them as well. Times of personal wars and personal depressions, periods of isolation where the holidays just weren't that great. And maybe we found ourselves alone in those times as well. But here's the thing that I wanted to say about all of that. What we learn from these times when things don't go right, when we're not feeling like the holidays are perfect, is we learn that we aren't really ever alone. We aren't really ever as isolated as we might sometimes feel. Now, on Sunday, I talked about this a little bit too. We talked about how one of the things that we can be grateful for this time of year is we can be grateful that we are loved. Now, in the church context, of course, at least on Sunday, we were talking about how we can be grateful that we are loved by God or the divine or the transcendent or the great whatever. Choose your word. That in our tradition, God is love. So, the name that you use isn't as important. But we are also loved by people, because the great whatever uses people to manifest its love in the world. So our hearts are open to each other. And what I find in all these stories of times of stress and crisis, of imperfect holidays, is that one of the things that makes them a little sad or a little maudlin, right, is that we want to be together. It's because we love each other. And that love is something to celebrate even now, because we are still connecting. We are still reaching out. Now, obviously, we can literally reach out, cards and letters, phone, Zoom, as annoying as it can be. But even when we don't do those things, we are reaching out in spirit. I know that when I and the family sit here at this table for Thanksgiving dinner, we will be thinking about all of you. We'll be remembering our friends who we're not with right now. We'll be talking about people we know, like we always do. And I know that other people will be doing the same things, thinking of us and telling stories too. Because that's a natural part of being alive. It's a natural part of being thankful. And it's just a natural part of being human. And if you're alone, right, there's going to be people this year who will be having Thanksgiving dinner alone. It's important to remember that when you are sitting there thinking about all the people in your life, those people are thinking about you too. Even though we are all having smaller Thanksgivings, right? Everyone's looking for that smaller turkey, as you know, if you read the news. We're still thinking about those people that aren't there. And so if you are alone and you're thinking about those people, it's important to remember that you are present at other people's tables in spirit, if not in body. And that's, while it's not maybe quite as time-consuming or distracting as being there in body, it is important to remember that too, that you're not alone. So I urge you guys, this holiday season, Thanksgiving in particular, but at other times too, to remember to take a moment and just think about the people you're thinking about, and think about how they are thinking about you, to reach out spiritually, if that's a word that works for you. It certainly does for me. And to remember that we are much more close than we think we are sometimes, because we do hold each other in our hearts. So that was all I really wanted to say, but I do have for you a reading. Every year on in the newsletter, it's just Thursdays now, before Thanksgiving, I always put in the same prayer by Theodore Parker. Theodore Parker was a Unitarian minister, an abolitionist from Boston, and this is where I get to flex. This is the collected works of Theodore Parker, actually, and a very important transcendentalist thinker. He died young, but was very influential, both in abolitionism and in the church, since certainly the Unitarian Church. So I have a prayer that I always do, and I thought I'd read it since we were here. And this is, here you go. You notice this book matches the other ones. And it's a poem kind of for Thanksgiving, and it's called Trials. For all the trials of my earlier day, I thank thee, God, that they all have been that darkness lay about the rugged way which I must tread alone. For all I've seen of disappointment, sorrow, pain, and loss, I thank thee for them all. And did I sin? I grieve not I've been tried, for even the cross of penitence has taught me how to win. Yet, of the ills as child or man I've borne, my hopes laid waste or friends sent off by death, remorse has most of all my bosom torn, for time misspent, ill deeds, or evil breath. But yet, for every grief my heart has worn, dear God, I thank thee, trusting still with a hearty faith. So, I hope you have a good Thanksgiving. I hope you have a good holiday season. Please do reach out in spirit to each other. I will be doing the same. And if you need me, please reach out with your phone or email or Zoom or whatever else you need to do. Because again, even though we are physically apart, we are together in many ways, and we are constantly seeking ways to show our love for each other. So that is all from me right now. I hope you have a blessed Thanksgiving, and I will see you on the other side. Bye.